Namaste everyone. In today's video, we're going to focus on Patanjali's Yoga Sutra 1.28. In this sutra, Muni Patanjali explains to us how we're supposed to use Om in our yoga sadhana and how it is to be practiced. So let's take a good look at the sutra and start breaking it up. So the sutra itself goes, Tajja pasta dartha bhavanam. So once again, quite a short and cute sutra right here. Let's break it up word by word now and understand it even better. So the first word here is tat, which is sounding like tajja because it's going into the second word. But the first word itself is tat, which is saying that or it's. And since sutras are a continuation, this it or that here is talking about Om from the previous sutra. The next word here is jap or jap, that japa. So japa or jap as we often pronounce it. And here it means the repetition or the repeated pronouncing of that particular mantra. Then we come back to the sound of tat in the sutra. And once again it refers to its or that. And then we come to the next two words, which are artha and bhavanam. So artha refers to meaning. So literally the meaning of artha is meaning. And here in this case, another way we can also look at it is it stands for the word for, F-O-R. So we're going to understand why it has two meanings in this case in the latter half of this video. And then we come to the next word, which is Bhavanam. So Bhavanam over here is referring to something that is contemplated on, meditated on, and also as a second meaning, something that is repeatedly done as a treatment to create a particular condition. So now, these are the meanings of each of the words. Now let's start to understand the sutra even better. So here in the sutra, there are two ways of looking at it. Number one is that we have to pronounce Om or do its japa so that our mind is constantly filled up with the sound of Om, and it almost becomes like an object of meditation for us, using which we're able to go deeper into the path of meditation and yogic sadhana. The second way to look at it is that we're repeating it so many times that the meaning of Om starts to reveal itself and it becomes clearer to us from an intellectual or a more understanding based perspective. So commentators are pretty divided on whether it's the first meaning or the second meaning, and in this particular commentary that we follow, we're going to take the meaning to mean that it actually just wants us to move forward on the path of yoga and use Om as a sound that will guide us into the deeper states of meditation. And the reason we've chosen this element is, or this form of the commentary, is because when you look at Om, we discussed in the previous sutra that it's simply a sound. It's a sound comprising the first alphabet of the Devanagari script and the last one, and then all together it's sort of giving us this sound that we can use to still our minds and to move forward. We had understood that it's not trying to form a prayer, or it's not trying to make a request from the divine, but is instead just a sound aid to help us along the journey. And keeping that definition in mind, we're applying the same thing here and saying that it's just simply sound or nada, and by using it correctly, we can move forward and go deeper into our meditative states. Now, there are a couple of ways of pronouncing this sound of Om, and as you must have seen in different yoga classes, each person pronounces it very differently. But let's understand the three modes of pronunciation and then also the ways in which the syllables can be broken up to pronounce it correctly. So the three modes of pronunciation are, number one, Vaikhari, which refers to basically pronouncing the syllable or the sound loudly, using your mouth. So that doesn't mean that we're going to speak super loudly as if we're on stage doing a theatre production, but instead it just means that you are verbally saying the sound, and the sound is coming out from your mouth. That's Vaikhari. The second one is Upanshu, which basically refers to when you're kind of whispering the sound in such a way that only you can hear it. It's not very accessible to people around you. You might just be saying Om in a very soft, whispering tone. And the third mode of pronouncing it is Manas, which means that you're using it entirely mentally and you're just kind of chanting it from a mental perspective. So you might just be sitting in meditation and chanting Om through your mind, and the sound is not coming out from your mouth or it's not being whispered. So these are the three modes or the ways in which you can use the pranav jap or the Om syllable to keep using it depending on what you prefer. In most cases, as teachers, we recommend that you start with Vaikhari or the full pronunciation, because most of the times, if you haven't practiced yoga for too long, doing it just mentally is challenging, right? Like, it's very hard to just say something mentally and stay with it. So for beginner practitioners, we always recommend that first you start by saying it loudly, then you go into the whispering zone, and then you go mental. So, or you take it into the mental space. So that is essentially the three modes or the ways in which we can go about it. And this is what we have understood about the modes of the sutra. Now coming to the second part where we talk about the syllables, right? So it's made up of A, U and M, and all together it forms Om. Now there are again three ways in which people pronounce it. The first one is where both or all three syllables are given equal weightage and A, O, M is pronounced all together equally. The second form is where Om is pronounced for longer, the O part, and the M is pretty short. I've seen this very often in yoga classes where, you know, students will say Oh, and then it kind of just elongates the O very loudly and the M becomes very short in the end. That's the second way. And the third way is kind of having O also decently long, but the M as pretty much longer than that. So these are the three ways in which we can pronounce it. And again, what most teachers recommend is that if you're on a spiritual path and you're trying to withdraw inwards, the third mode is the most recommended, because there the M sound with the lips closed is prolonged, and that allows us to withdraw inwards because we're not actively moving the mouth, and it's kind of this what we call a very seamless dhvani. It allows you to just control your mind, calm it down, and take it towards the inside. Whereas O is a more loud sound, a more external kind of sound, and that is recommended for beginner or medium mid-length practitioners who might have not practiced yoga for so long. So it entirely depends on A, your level of practice, B, the reason you're practicing, and what you prefer to pronounce Om as. But like I said, most teachers who come from the spiritual tradition will say that do the M sound for a longer period of time. And often what my teachers would say is that the way you have to look at it is that the M sound is like the tapering of a bell, kind of just going and then tapering out. So that's how we have been pronouncing it, and that's how I've learned it as well. And one more thing I'll add over here is that when we write it in Sanskrit, we write it with avagrahas, which indicate to us how long or for how much time should we pronounce it. Now this avagraha looks like an S, like the English alphabet S, but it basically stands for the matras, or the amount of time that you need to prolong the pronunciation for. So the most accepted avagraha format is A with 3 S's or 3 matras of A, and M with 5 S's right after it. So O, going 5 matras long. So this is the most accepted format, and this is what we follow in most of our classes as well. So I hope that this has helped you to understand a little bit more about the Om chant, how do we pronounce it, what's the right way of doing it, and why do we do it. Now the why do we do it is because the more you chant this mantra, what happens to your mind is it starts, the only thing in the chitta or your consciousness is this sound. right? You're continuously producing this sound and your chitta is completely engaged in it. And because of that, it's then very easy to move into a meditative state from that space. I'd also like to say over here that essentially when we're chanting Om, we have to leave a little bit of gap, you know. It's not that we go Om, Om, Om. It's not that quick. You chant one Om, you wait for a couple of seconds to experience the impact of the sound, to see what effect it's having on you, and then you go for the next Om. So there's always a little bit of a pause, and the reason for that pause is you want that sound to kind of repeat itself and come from this, you know, I'll give you an example. Sometimes when we're looking at an image, and I'm sure you've seen these visual tricks on social media platforms, if you look at an image for long enough and then you move your eyes somewhere else, you still see that image for a bit. You know, your eyes still have the impression of that image in their mind. And this is similar to what we're trying to do with Om. We chant it the first time properly and then we give it a couple of seconds for the reverberation of the sound to be felt within us, and then to move to the next round of Om. So this pause is really important. I see a lot of students that are just continuously going at it, and then we have to guide them to just, you know, hey, slow down. You need to have that little pause in between to feel the effect of the Om chant. So that is something to keep in mind for all of you, so that when you're chanting it, you can actually feel the process of Nadhanusandhan, which we will come to in a later video. It helps you to just enter into a laya stage or come into a very close union with the sound that you're pronouncing. And the reason we said in the beginning that it's not so much about the meaning is because when you're chanting, it's the sound, you know. Meaning is given by us. I mean, humans give sound meaning. But with Om, we're just focusing more on its sound rather than focusing on its intellectual meaning. It's more just the production of that sound that gives us the ability to move deeper into the meditative states. So I hope this has given you a good overview of this entire sutra. We request you now to please share this video if you found it helpful with anybody that's studying the Yoga Sutras or who might find it interesting and helpful. Also, please do subscribe to our channel to support our work and encourage us further on this journey. We look forward to seeing you in a future video. Until then, take care and keep practicing. Namaste.